All right, says we're live. Hello and welcome to the first weekly Roach Crossing General, whatever the string of adjectives I was using. Roach Crossing Weekly General live stream, October 21st, 2021. Thank you all for being very patient. This has been a long time coming, and I'm actually ecstatic to be here finally. Sorry about the postponement since last week was, I was a bit sick. Fortunately, not COVID. Um, so sick that although I had originally decided to crawl over to the computer to do the live stream, upon trying to do so, I realized that I was not able to. So here we are, 1 week in the future. I'm feeling substantially better. I do reserve the right to blow my nose and cough occasionally. Um, with that being said, in case anybody's actually here, um, my goal here is just to be able to make myself a bit more available for some of the larger questions and emails and whatnot that some people have that may want a bit more of an interactive answer to things about husbandry or morphs or species or what have you. So, I'll just continue to work on emails, which was my background plan. Anyways, check back in the chat every once in a while to see what's going on, any questions, etc. Hopefully, get a little bit of a cult following for these things, and maybe eventually one day spice things up a bit more. Maybe do a bit more focused live streams where I show off some projects I'm working on, or get into cultures like the wall over there, etc. So, if anybody's actually here, which it seems we do have 2 people, and I don't seem to have any participants. It just says me. So feel free to, if you are there, make yourself known in the chat. And otherwise, enjoy looking at my pensive face as I go through emails and internally mock. Hello, Derrico. Good to see you. You are officially the first person in the Roach Crossing, get the string of text, weekly general live stream, October 21st, 2021. And thank you for coming to stare at me for a period of time as I work on things. If you have any questions or have any friends you'd like to drag in, go right ahead. And maybe we'll get some more folks going on. I know a couple people who may show their face eventually, such as Will. If Will, you're already watching, then hello to you. If not, I will find you and I will find a way to make you watch. So, this is a bit weird in the sense that while I'm looking at these orders, I just am realizing I have a tendency to talk out loud as I'm analyzing what people are asking for and telling myself, oh, that's not available, or oh, this is. So maybe I'll fight that urge. Maybe I won't. I guess we will see. Oh, I see I have. Somebody else has popped up. Hi, Jen. Good to see more for a couple more people. Wonderful to see some eggs. Delightful. Always nice to see eggs in cultures of various sorts or just in general. I would like to take a moment to expose that I'm actually not alone in this room, not just with all the various arthropods and whatnot, but I am accompanied by my good boy, Mr. Victor, who really wanted to play before the live stream. Unfortunately, we did not get to play before the live stream. However, we will be going for a very long walk this evening after the live stream, as he has walking needs that need to be filled because I have been dead and sensitive lunged for the last week. So I'll go through a couple emails and then maybe go off on a bit of a crazy tangent here and there, perhaps. Is my website fairly up to date in terms of Roach availability? That is the next thing that I am hauling my butt out under after emails are finally done. I've gotten all the way up to September, hopefully get halfway through September by the end of today, and then ultimately with another 10 days get caught up to the present. Most of the availability still should be good from the last time I updated. There are probably a couple of exceptions. In general, most of my colonies that were doing very well last year, that when I did the last availability update, are still going pretty strong with a couple of exceptions. So, but if you'd like to ask, feel free to post a list of what you may be interested in or what have you now, and I can tell you, you can hear straight from the horse's mouth if it's available or not. Are most of my emails now orders? It's a mix of lots of things. Inbox count is currently at 1,357. And since I already went through and did a spam clear, most of those are orders or just general questions about things. I would assume probably 1/10 of them are inquiries, whether or not I have. I always mix up the two parts of the genus, so let me look it up. Archaespirostreptus gigas available. So it's usually mostly orders, varying in terms of whether it's, somebody who wants 20 dwarf white isopods or somebody who wants half my roach inventory. So it's usually a huge variability. Hello, Derico. I see you found a keyboard. That's wonderful. Maybe a keyboard. And again, this is because of the hiatus that I've been on and then the decision to go on the suicide trip to Arizona, which, I might as well grab one of these off of here and show off things. Where's a good one that doesn't seem to have a couple of grain lights on it? So, this is what myself and by extension, I guess, Will almost died metaphorically this time, fortunately over, were all the Irenaviga that we had gone out to collect. And I don't know if that's reading backwards or straightforwards. This is live streams completely new to me. I'm glad that I was able to at least find the button thing that let me start streaming at 7. But this is the one of the cultures of Irenaviga that I brought back, and in the end, they're going to go in larger containers, but these have proven pretty effective for getting smaller groups of stuff established. The only problem is that they tend to dry out very quickly, and you can't get like a really good gradient of humidity and heat and whatnot from one side to the other. So I've basically been doing daily care on all of these Irenaviga, which isn't as annoying as it sounds, except for, I've kind of piled the food in and put that on the dry side and been watering just one side to keep it moist. So there's been a couple of them that have had some grain mite explosions that I've had to deal with through alternative means, like drying out the containers or putting them fully on a little heat section there. So other than that, going pretty well. I'm glad that we went. And I'm also glad that it's over. So, but yeah, so just a billion and a half different things going on constantly to keep track of. Excuse me. Hey, Joshua Campos. There's a familiar name. A couple weeks ago, sharing your methods for containing climbing roaches. Yes, and in fact, if my, let me just put a mark on where I am. Let's see if the search will actually pull up the most recent email. Okay, good, it did. Joshua Campos, present in the chat, inquires, I'm curious. Actually, I don't know if I want to read this out loud. I don't know if that's embarrassing or something for you. Oh well. You have my permission to read any future emails I send to you out loud in public, I guess. Tit for tat. Would you mind sharing your methods for containing climbing roach species? I've been needing to rehouse many of my species for a while now, but wanted to make sure I would have the lowest risk of escapees with the new enclosures as possible. Up to this point, my go-to has been using Sterilite gasket containers with a petroleum jelly barrier. However, I have had nymphs of a few species surpass the barrier and squeeze out of the supposedly airtight lid. I know you're very stringent about the purity of your stock, and likewise probably very articulate about containment methods. So I thought it'd be worth sending you a message on the topic. Wonderful. Okay. Well, let me just grab one of these bins here. Step over the dog. Sorry, Victor. So over the years, when I was using Sterilite bins and whatnot, I first used the blue lid ones that just kind of like sit on, you sort of snap the lids on. And those worked pretty okay. But then, you get a bunch of your Ecotis going and the petroleum gets gunked up with stuff. And then the next thing you know, you've got babies all over the place. And then I sort of upgraded from there to gasket containers and was sort of obsessed with that for a bit, especially when I was living with she who will not be named's grandparents. And her grandmother did not appreciate the occasional escapes, even though things would desiccate very quickly in the very dry attic they were in. And then recently I've been on a kick with glass aquaria and these critter keepers. And the reason why I've been going with the critter keepers after being, kind of a critic of them for a very long time, I like the fact that they can be stacked and you still get sort of cross airflow across the top here. I've been very obsessed with overventilating a lot of my collection nowadays. I feel like it's the way to go, and that if I had to, I would much rather prefer to be just dumping water into containers constantly and not having to think about it versus having to worry about things getting too wet, which is the default state here, except when the furnace is on and the temperature of the air humidity drops to like 45, 55% relative humidity. And then that's great because I can just spray everything constantly and not have to worry about things drowning or mites or what have you. So anyways, so starting from the outside, just your typical larger critter keeper here, which I also like for the little top handles, make things a little bit more carryable, blah, blah, blah. But I have a frost cloth layer here, and this is just my little paranoia. It's not always necessary. This little frost cloth layer, or I also have muslin for some of the containers because it's a bit kind of makes a better seal because of the thickness. The lid has to really snap down on it, and it really makes a seal, kind of like a little fake cloth gasket. But this frost cloth is good too, just as this is a contingency protocol for stuff. But then underneath that we have, I had that today actually. I went to lift a container of Botella Vega that was in one of these, and I dropped it, and I screamed bloody murder. And Will, who was over helping me, like ran over to me, and I was staring at the ground like a deaf mute for a couple of seconds because I was listening to music and I couldn't process everything that was going on. Fortunately, it wasn't an established colony of Botella Vega. But it was still not a fun experience. I think I busted maybe 2-3 critter keepers that way. So I definitely try not to do this with them. I definitely prefer to hold them like this, but some of them get locked on pretty. And you know what? It's even more of a gamble with the cloth and stuff, because even if this clicks, even if these little things click here, it doesn't always sit on perfectly. So you can go to lift something, especially if it's heavy, and you just rip the top right off. Unfortunately, like I said, that's a rarity. I'm pretty paranoid about lifting stuff, keeping stuff separate, blah, blah, blah. So looking here, I have a barrier of the Roach No Crossing stuff, which was from Adam at Roach Town. Sorry, Adam, if you are ever watching this, remember. Let me look that up so I do the plug properly here. Roachville. Adam at Roachville, who got me hooked on this Roach No Crossing barrier. And I will read my little marketing blurb here. This revolutionary material was discovered by Adam, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Messias Mikias of Roachville, and is the ultimate cockroach barrier. It is waterproof, food grade, safe, inorganic, functional at a wide temperature range, easily removed with dish soap, long lasting, and ruthlessly effective. And this is now what I use for all of my barriers for everything. I haven't tested to see if it works on ants yet. I would assume it doesn't because they're kind of crazy. And I know there's that like fluon stuff that people usually use, and I tried that for roaches, and it was just a disaster. I don't know how anybody could want to work with that. I mean, people usually keep their ant cultures relatively sterile to roach cultures. You've got all those little chambers and connections and stuff, but it's not like this where there's fungus gnats and miscellaneous mold and fungi that pops up on stuff that gets stuck in the side and blah blah blah. So it's a different tool for a different job. But anyways, it's the Roach No Crossing barrier there, and I love it. It keeps uricotis in with like 99.99% effectiveness. It works on Quercunura parashai. I think I have my new hybrid Quercunura parashai Bantua. So it's a species Namibia up there, next to the one green container. Some Bantua should be Bantua robusta. I gotta replace that. But anyways, so it works on really tiny stuff that's been historically a huge pain in the ass to keep contained. I know TJ has been bemoaning how the Plectoptera poii he has climb right to the top, and they're like little specks, and so you can like smash a whole bunch of them accidentally just trying to work in the container, taking the lid on and off. But I don't have that problem with this stuff, and it lasts. It does last. It lasts a lot longer than petroleum, than Vaseline and whatnot, but it doesn't last forever. The effectiveness does decline, probably mostly due to all of the fungus gnats getting caught in it, and the roaches can climb up the corpse piles. And then, if things are humid, or if you get something like an exuvia stuck in there, what have you, that can mold and that can degrade the quality. But you can also just wipe off the layer of that and sort of replace it. This stuff also doesn't run very much, so it's really good for just sort of doing touch up and then reapplying a thinner layer barrier. So I love it. I love it, and it's really gotten me to go back into heavily a lot of the species that I had sort of shied away from getting too many of for fear of stuff's going to get out and cross or contaminate localities or whatever, like the Euricotis and whatnot. Black ants every year does kind of dissuade them. Yeah, I had for the last 3 winters, I had brought in, gosh, I can't remember if it was in fall or if it was in late winter. I brought in a piece of wood from outside that had a Tapenoma. What are those guys? What are those gals called? Sessile? However, let's see if the antwiki.org has a pronunciation. No. Odorous house ants. And I had brought in a little piece of wood with them, and they were in there in torpor for whatever reason, which is why I think this happened in early spring. And I just sort of put it down next to the work desk, and I was just sort of like, oh yeah, I'll put that away in like a couple of hours. And I went back to put it away. I was like, it's just sitting on the ground. And I shook it around a little to see like if there were any ants, and the entire colony had moved out of the piece of wood somewhere off under the steps or something. And I was just like, oh Lord. And so for the last 3 years, so the last year wasn't very impressive. I don't think I saw more than 1 or 2 elates. For the last couple of years, they would have a nuptial flight in late winter in the basement. So there'd be elates in the little forage trail or whatever, and a bunch of elates running along with it for the last couple of years. Like I said, last year, I think the heat in the winter has really threw them off, and sort of the colony completely declined or collapsed. Yeah, last year they moved in with my hey, invertebrate dude, another familiar name. Good to see ya. I'm just going off on a tangent about how I infested my basement with odorous house ants a couple of years ago, and how this last winter they seem to have finally be dying off, although they did make a very strong stand in my Harlequin roach container. The roaches didn't seem to mind at all, so I just kind of had that sort of laissez-faire approach to stuff. Is like, well, they're not attacking the roaches. The roaches don't seem irritated. The ants are just kind of here, so I didn't bother to do anything about it. But anyways, yeah. So this is sort of like the layerage of stuff that I've been doing to keep things contained, and this is Lobopterella demidiotypes colony here, made of some individuals that got into my mahogany strain hisser colony from another container. So yeah, so that's how I keep stuff contained, is a frost cloth. On the larger containers, I use sort of a nylon mesh. The holes are a bit bigger. It makes it easier to water because sometimes the water doesn't really go through this unless you sort of spray a spot for a couple of seconds, and the water sort of soaks into this and then it goes through. So I like the sort of meshy lid under covers for larger stuff that I want to make sure gets a good drink. And yeah, it's very fortunate that it was a species that didn't kill roaches. I have actually had very few instances of, and I think my latitude is probably responsible for this, fortunately, of ants getting into colonies and causing problems. I remember some sort of, I want to say it was pharaoh ants, maybe? It was a long time ago, back when I still lived with my parents. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't pharaoh ants. I don't know if they range here. I am not a myrmecologist. My mother used to call them piss ants. So that's what I picked up on, and I have never cared exceptionally about culturing ants, so I never looked into them. Yeah, it seems like they were probably pharaoh ants. They got into a couple of my cultures at some point when I lived with my parents, and I just removed the roaches that I don't think they killed them. I think they just went to some carcasses that I had not removed. And then I want to say, if Alan's here, or maybe it was Will, when we went to Florida, we had a bunch of ants get into our stuff on Key Largo at our website or at our campsite. And Will had created a 32-ounce deli cup I need the size here, that had a chamber above that he had sort of taken the inspiration from a white ant springtail cultivation container that I had set up. And the idea was he was going to use it to try and maintain some of the myrmecophilic species we found, like the little silverfish and ant crickets and whatnot. And appropriately and affectionately named Helen 32 ounces because the idea was that they would put pallid roaches in the upper chamber and they would eat nothing but like grains and fish foods, really high quality stuff, and then poop it out onto the myrmecophiles underneath. And it works really well for the white ant springtails, and eventually there's so many of them they don't need that sort of facilitation. But Helen 32 ounces was invaded by, I think it was big-headed ants on Key Largo, along with a lot of our other stuff. And it was funny because I had like 4 boxes of priority mail boxes retconned into being transportation containers. And I remember going through it and panicking. Fortunately, the ants were not in there for too long, so they didn't kill a lot of stuff. They killed a couple of things. And eventually we'll trap them in the Helm 32 ounces to use them for the myrmecophiles. They ended up slaughtering everything anyway. So it really was Helm 32 ounces. But where's I going with this? Anyway, so yeah, those are my limited experiences with ants killing stuff. Tetramorium don't really come in the house. I've had carpenter ants actually at U of M at the interpretive center in the bug zoo. They got into a couple of the containers. I think they ate an apple that I put in with the katydids, which I thought was very weird. They left it sort of all torn apart and whatnot. But other than that, not really. Catch up on the chat here. Whoa, quite a few things here. I'm actually going to answer 1 or 2 emails really quick, since that's kind of why half the reason I'm here, I suppose. Oh, that's a long email. All right, so we will take a break from that for a second anyways and get back to this. Do I use a mister or a water bottle for watering? It's a little of both. I actually hate having to move supplies around between rooms because then I forget where it's going and I have to do work and fill water up and all that stuff. So in here, I just have the Zep industrial sprayer for hitting stuff with. And I like it because it's high capacity. Ooh, high capacity magazine. And I use that for stuff that's in here that I need it for. Downstairs, I have a repurposed herbicide sprayer that I use for spraying off all of the aquariums and whatnot, because there's just so much stuff there, and I would not get it done if I had to go around with a little hand sprayer like that. So I use whatever when I'm on trips, or if I have something during the summer that's overly sensitive to too much water or whatever. I have a little teeny tiny little sprayer bottle thing. I think it's used for perfume or some other human toiletry stuff. You can get it at like a Walmart or a Meijer, and I just use that just to sort of give a little light misting to stuff. So it really depends on what I'm doing. If it's a big culture of something, if I want to watch the light leave Will's eyes as I'm watering like the Dinocyrus pseudoscorpions, I'll just spray the whole herbicide spray and then just hold down the thing and watch as Will panics. Or at least that's what he used to. Now I think he's sort of on the same page of what's a good word? Courteous apathy, maybe. Good phrase. Let's see. Am I on iNaturalist? I am not. Maybe eventually. Will's on there. If he's in the chat, maybe he could plug his thing. I mean, I would love to go out and document every single thing, but I'm usually so busy with stuff in here or getting out and my head away from stuff that's in here. I don't have time to keep track and do extra other stuff. I like to be able to just put this somewhere else and then walk away and go look for bugs or breathe or what have you. Maybe one day I'll get into it because again, here I am doing videos, which I've taken forever to do. Any new Roach projects you can show off? Oh, Mr. Invertebrate Dude. Well, I can pull out one of these guys here off the heat. Let me pull up a different one. Not that. Where's the Deming? It's saying right here, so I have to do daily maintenance. And I already had a little talk about this, but this is one of the Vega from the trip. This is the group of 4 from Deming, New Mexico. And they're here because these containers sort of force them into close contact, so you get more of the effect and they'll grow faster, blah, blah, blah. Easier to keep track of them and count them. But a lot harder to manage the humidity and temperature and whatnot, which is why they're here. So I can do daily sprays because they dry out very quickly before they get upgraded into their final Vega containers, which are maybe about 5 times the floor plan of those, roughly. Yeah, about that. And those are in the basement in the bug room. This is not the bug room, contrary to popular belief. This is the office where I do office things. That is also full of bugs. And as much as I would love to crack into them, I am kind of terrified to do any more maintenance in them than I need to, so I can maintain the humidity gradient and not disturb them. There's also these strange parasitoid flies that emerged from a couple of them. I think I only found 3-4 flies overall in all of the cups. But I'm a little paranoid that I'm going to open one of them up and one of the flies is going to get out. It's going to be a mated female and it's going to go downstairs and it's going to wreck my life because it'll be able to parasitize polyphaga or something ridiculous like that. So I just sort of leave them be and I spray once a day and then I adjust the temperature, the humidity if the gray mites decide to show up, which has been surprisingly very effective as long as I keep on top of it. What's under the heat lamps? Let's see. Actually, the two brightest looking ones are rainbow grasshoppers. In that one are Texas color phase, pure ones. Over here, because I was unable to get Ben to go out and catch me another male from Arizona, are 2 female Arizona subspecies. I don't think they even count them as subspecies anymore. Arizona rainbow grasshoppers and 2 males from Texas. So creating a hobby line that couldn't possibly go wrong. I'm more curious to see what sort of phenotype they'll have when crossed, and if I can even get eggs to hatch, which I have from the Arizona ones before. It wasn't too difficult, but it was only a hatch of about 7, and only maybe 1 made it to adulthood, and this was a couple of years ago. Let's see. Secret project that I shall not reveal in the 2 left containers. But in these 2 here, the Cotinus mutabilis from Bylus in Arizona when Will and I were at the little highway rest stop thing digging through the compost. And next to them's the Hemithyrsospora vittata bin, which I stare at longingly daily, praying that today's the day that I see babies pop up. And I can't even remember how long when I had them in suboptimal care conditions it took for babies to pop up. I remember being kind of ridiculously long. I feel like it was at least 2-3 months before I started seeing babies the last time that I had them. I know that they're not very quick to hatch, and for being a Lilitobiid, they're also not very quick growing. Especially the first couple instars seem to take forever, and then all of a sudden they get gigantic. Thanks a bunch for the info. Frost cloth mesh. Yeah, having learned what frost cloth is coming quite handy with a lot of these things. And it doesn't keep out pests like forward flies and fungus gnats and stuff like that with 100% efficiency. But I feel like it kind of cuts the numbers down and sort of prevents them from getting in or out once they're into the containers. Downside with that is the row beetles can't get in to get at the fungus gnats, but it's not a huge problem up here per se. Let's see. Yeah, and 2 months for the Vittata nymphs. They probably, and I'm also kind of like not concerned, but just sort of like thinking, do the ooths need to absorb water to hatch, kind of like Ectobius do, or something? And if I remember looking at them the last time I had them in a not 10-gallon tank, that's a pain to dig through. I remember them being looking like they might swell up when watered. So, but also, it was 2 months, and in the last setup that I had them in, it was it didn't have a heat light on it. It wasn't heated at all. It was just sitting around at room temperature. So I also think, am I actually screwing things up because they want like to be cooler, and I'm setting them into some sort of estivation by keeping heat on them and keeping them dry, but then I'm like, stop overthinking it. There's no doubt tons of eggs in there somewhere. So I don't know. I need to just relax, but I really like that species, and I feel like I've set them up properly. Yeah. So and there's a humidity and all the other gradient in there, but I water it once or twice a day. And the adults sometimes, a fair amount of the time, they come out to drink. But there's also, wherever they're laying their ooths, they're probably underneath the coconut croutons, so they're probably a little humid microclimate underneath that, like you find a lot of ectobiate eggs in outside. So, and like I said, I figured that by misting them in the wild, it's probably not consistently moist per se. I mean, unless they're a monsoon species, which I guess they could be. All right, we're gonna go to iNaturalist and see if there's any reports for heavy Thersosera vittata and see what time of year and where. But I also would not expect a monsoon species to live quite as long as those things have as adults. It's been very surprising. No results. Did I spell something wrong? Of course I did. Hemithersosera is not Hemithersosera vittata. Let's see. So, according to iNaturalist, okay, well, that's a very wide range for these. I'm curious. Yeah, so if they're burying them, which is, I mean, Ectobias do that too. Here, I'll take a moment to answer some of these. And some eggs, if you're referring to the rainbow grasshoppers, yes. And the males from Texas were very eager to get on the Arizona females. One of them was for sure a virgin. The other one, was a wild caught as an adult, I think, or while I still had a male in the little transportation thing before the male kicked the bucket. So I did take an egg cup from that container. I couldn't see if there were any eggs actually laid. And I labeled it, pure Arizona before I put the males in just in case. 250 brooder for heating cold months. What types of stands? So I actually have a bunch of old IV heaters from my mom's various procedures that I've used to clamp the lamps onto, and they work very well because they're tripods. They're pretty stable. 250-watt bulbs, pretty heavy, but I remember running those on the clamps before and not having any problems. I like doing top heat on a lot of stuff now. I don't know if it's a phase or not, but I get the advantage of top-down heat for a lot of things, and then also I can put containers above them and then use the heat that's rising, so it's not, my $500 electrical bill is a little bit better spent. Okay, Thailand. Strain of Hemithorsassera vittata we have is from Thailand. I mean, yeah, that's right. That whole area through India and whatnot, that all gets a pronounced seasonal monsoon in its upper hemisphere, or northern hemisphere, upper hemisphere. Northern hemisphere. And seems that the reports go up in response to that time of year with number of observations. So I'd have to look at some of the winter observations I get. I'm sure I'm just overthinking things. I mean, a lot of the stuff. I mean, um, the Theria, and I'm not sure. I've heard other roach people say Theria, and I've heard Theria and whatnot. I usually say Theria because they're ethereal roaches, and I have 500 different Latin pronunciation influences in my life, ranging back to high school. So the Theria species, I mean, they're obviously very seasonal with respect to when adults pop up in India. And yet you get adults popping up at all kinds of different times in captivity, and you get their own little synchronization of emergences of groups of adults too. So I'm probably just being impatient. T. nuptialis. Oh, yeah, a fourth species, and we can go back and forth on the Pettiveriana Bernhardti debate, but without pointing fingers, I'm aware of a certain somebody who at one point had colonies of both Pettiveriana and Bernhardti, and I was originally told about the whole hindwing differences and stuff. But then when I went to inquire about this, whichever one wasn't the one that we have in the United States, and what had become of them, I was told that the colonies were mixed together because there wasn't actually a difference. So that kind of made me a bit skeptical of whatever was going on with that situation. So, like the botany community says, sometimes they prefer to use common names because they're more stable than Latin. Obviously, I prefer to use the Latin and blah, blah, blah. But the entity known as the domino roach, it would be very nice to have another species from that genus in culture in the U.S. And nuptialis, pretty roach. If I recall, it looks kind of like regularis, but long. Thank you, Google. Teresa nuptialis. No, not today. Yeah, it's a very pretty roach. Yeah, it looks like an elongated regularis. I do like how there seems to be sexual dimorphism in the amount of coloration. So yeah, that'd be very neat to have. Kind of reminds me of a Eucharidia, actually, in terms of the shape, even though I know it's not. So yeah, that would be pretty neat. Or to have, I mean, just any new Caridiids are neat. I'm really hoping that, I get good colonies of all these Aeronavega going. Because, I mean, who knows how many of them that I have actually are all the same species, but it's just kind of cool. They're girthy, cute little weird roaches, and it's like an easy way to get a bunch more species and get people interested in keeping roaches. Oh, okay. Fluids, very important to stay hydrated. The keeper in Hong Kong was a recently imported Thuria strain that seems to be true Pettiveriana, consistently smaller than Bernhardti with much longer orange hindwings. Teens sometimes pop with orange hindwings, but the hindwing length doesn't change. Yeah, so I'm wondering, again with this, considering a certain somebody mixed their colonies of short and long hind wings together because that apparently was a good idea, having two distinct entities, probably both with different collection information, and then mixing them together for whatever reason. It would be curious to see how how to tease these things apart. Um, but that's all I'm going to go into on that for now, and just express that regardless of the names attached to things and whatnot, that it would be very cool to have more members of that genus available, because I mean they're very easy to keep, and it seems like Eucharidia, for whatever reason, um, despite there being a ton of beautiful species in that genus, they haven't really popped up other than, at least in the U.S., other than Yasumatsui. Um, yeah, Ola Grangiani. I think the first I remember back in my day, the first ones I saw I think were on Bugs in Cyberspace, so they were from Orange Colony, and I can't remember if I just who did I get mine from? Matt K, the man, the myth, the legend known as Matt K on Roach Forum. I think in 2010, he sent me a bunch of them when he was getting out of roaches and getting out of bugs to move to Canada. I think that's where a lot of mine came from. Um, so, um, so yeah, and yeah, speaking about the purity of stuff, I think it was Alan who had brought up that somebody was able to make hybrids between various species, which just makes me more distressed that a certain somebody who had a large colony of Theria, Bernhardti, or Pediveriana, or whatever, ended up mixing his together, because who knows if those two entities were actually compatible, and then there could be more shenanigans going on now. But anyways, yeah, at least I will say, compared to when things started, people keep very close tabs on localities and whatnot for things. And I know that I myself am guilty of creating at least one hobby line, that being the Parcoblata fulvescens, just because he's getting a bit annoyed with not being able to continually culture different types of Parcoblata. And I mean, it has a purpose. I mean, now we won't lose that strain because it's ironclad. But Alan will have to forgive me for my sins. Actually, I think that wasn't that far of a cross. I think that might have been a Montgomery to Tuscaloosa Parcoblata fulvescens. Parcoblata, some are hard. In the past, whenever I had the best luck with Parcoblata, it was always when I got a bunch of adult females, so fresh wild caught, and they just produced a ton of babies. And then regardless of diapause or conditions, you just sort of get like some that are naturally more suited to your culture conditions. And because there's so many of them, even with the factoring diapause or whatever in, you still get like adults emerging and pairing up, and you get another generation without, any sort of problems. And so some species, I mean, I have Notha that are from the Rio Rico to Chiricahua Mountains that Alan and I found on the first Arizona trip, and then he crossed them, and now we have, I think, all the captive stock except for the pair that I just sent him that I found at Cave Creek, are all from that long distance cross. I mean, mine took like 3 or 4 years to reach adulthood from Alan, and then now I have a good generation from stuff that matured. But some of it's just building up your numbers, and it's kind of hard to do that if you don't get a good first generation of something. Like the Tween Heart Parcoblata, which have been going for, I don't know, 6-7 years. They're pretty sturdy. They don't seem to need a diapause, but it's just a matter of getting the numbers up. And then, of course, not screwing up with stuff, too. I mean, like, I screw up with stuff because of various life and not life-related reasons all the time. So just being able to have a culture of a couple hundred going at any given time and then keep going, and then eventually they just sort of micro-adapt to whatever you're feeding them or the container and whatnot. And then you have a sturdy colony that you pretty much can't kill at some point. So it's kind of a numbers game. Yeah, if you found an ooth, you're kind of playing on hard mode in terms of like, is it going to hatch? Is it going to be parasitized? Am I going to get a good sex ratio? If you put them in too large of an enclosure, you're going to be waiting years for things to mature, if they even mature properly at all, because it could be too dry or you don't cool them, you don't get a good eclosure of adults and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, depends on the species, too. So, I mean, fulvescens is, unless, my view's kind of been tainted by my captive bastard crosses. But they're pretty ironclad. I think I actually need to keep them a bit drier moving into the future, because the ones that are currently being housed with my Paraphrinus CF cubensis are actually doing better than the main colony. But I mean, I guess for Parcoblata colonies, I need Alan to send me a bunch of Lata. I might actually go to Alabama and then Florida next May and just see if I can drag Alan away from his grit stuff, or if he'll be done with it by then, and just go Parcoblata hunting, because I just want to go to a locality and get like 20 fertilized adult females and then just bring them home and throw them in a 10-gallon, never have to worry about collecting another of that species ever again. I mean, currently I have good colonies of Parcoblata fulvescens, Parcoblata notha, Parcoblata CF americana, Twain Hart, Parcoblata pennsylvanica. Let's see, I think it's Montgomery that Alan sent me. For some reason, those are doing great. I can't quite put my finger on why. And I think that's it. I used to have a really good zebra colony that infested my Dorleo Orinae container. And I mean, this was like 8-9 years ago or something. And then those, I exterminated them because I didn't want the two species cohabitating. And now I realize that was a mistake, because now I can't get another zebra culture going and blah, blah, blah. So, but again, more of a testament to my growing desire to just go down to Alabama and Florida in the spring and kill myself capturing a bunch of Parcoblata adult females and just throwing them in a ridiculously sized enclosure and letting the nymphs infest it. Because there used to be somebody. Oh, the Guadalupe Panchlora species. Yeah, congratulations. I that sounded disingenuous, but it's because my brain was thinking about what happened today with Panchlora that made me unhappy, and I realized that the ones that we had collected in Florida in Redlands with our guide, Mr. Carlos, that I opened the actually it's a bittersweet thing, because I opened the container, and the problem with finding those in the wild was that there's Pycnoscelis all over too, but they're weird. They're like small and more of like a yellow than regular Surinamensis are. And so it's very difficult to tell the nymphs of the Panchlora and the Pycnoscelis apart in the wild. So I grabbed both and threw them in the culture container and thought that I only had the Panchlora in there, and ended up apparently not. But the weirdest thing, though, was those Pycnoscelis seemed to have outcompeted the Panchlora. No surprise there. But there was a male that had matured from the Pycnoscelis. Surinamensis is, except under duress, they don't produce males. But this male the wings were screwed up, and it had clearly been chewed on by one of the other ones, because I hadn't done maintenance in that container in a while. But the male was like, and it looked like a healthy male, other than the wings being chewed up. The antennae were all well formed, the legs were all well formed, but it was like this big. And compared to like normal adult male Surinamensis that I've seen pop up occasionally, about this big. And so it was just bizarre, this little teeny tiny things. It's probably a different chromosome count or something weird like that. So I set up another container and decided to keep those anyways, because it's probably a weird separate lineage. I mean, technically, like all the Suriname roaches are all separate lineages, because they all have different chromosome counts, and it's really weird. but they must be something really, really weird. So now, congratulations on the species Guadalupe, but I'm also very upset that I've lost the papaya redlands Panchlora. I'm going to have to pester Carlos for some more. Ask Alan. Actually, let me send Alan a message right now and pester him, because I'm sure he loves getting pestered by me. Let's see. Do you still have your special papaya redlands Panchlora? So we will see what he says. So I was upset about that. Other Panchlora finally changed the name. Oh, we're at 8 already. So this has been a lot of fun. I'm excited that we've got some good conversation going on. Seem to get a good amount of people in here, so I'll stick around for a bit longer. I am a little upset that I haven't been getting through as many emails as I could, but at the same time, as far as the last couple days are concerned, I have been getting a good number of them done. Been mostly doing stuff downstairs with Will, putting away various things in refreshing containers. So I think we'll go a bit longer and sort of call it. This has been very wonderful so far. Let's see. Pycnoscelis killed my flea. Yeah, I kind of wanted a culture of those anyways, because they're very different from the Florida Surinamensis. And there's the species Thailand that's almost certainly Surinams. But these Florida Surinams, if that's what they are, and yes, by eating them, or by just being more active than the nymphs and stressing them out. If they actually even are Surinamensis, which I'm pretty sure they are, but they're just weird. They're very different from all the other. I've gone up and down Florida, and at one point was collecting different localities of Surinams and whatnot, but they're very, very weird compared to all the other Surinams I've ever seen. So my pet theory is that probably since it's a papaya plantation, they probably brought in rootstock or soil or what have you from Hawaii. And Hawaii has probably got different mutant lines of Surinams introduced. And of course, they've got actual indicus there too. So I would think that it's probably a very distinct line of Surinamensis, unless there's other parthenogenetic species of Pycnoscelis other than Surinamensis and nigra. But yeah, eventually, I will make them available, probably call them redlands or papaya redlands or something like that. But yeah, they're pretty weird for being the most likely option being Surinamensis. But my little manatee park Panchlora that I collected also on the trip, those are doing fine. No Suriname invasion there. I think I was able. There weren't any Surinams when we were collecting there, so I think they're probably just Nivea. And again, those papaya ones, they were very weird. They're like very light green, kind of like species Giant is, but about the same size as true Nivea. That's what I was talking about. I have updated on the website. The relabeling of the old hobby strain of Panchlora is no longer listed as Nivea. And we kind of went back and forth on this, and I was sort of like playing devil's advocate and saying that, like, in these Tuscaloosa Panchlora, they don't look exactly like the illustrations for True Nivea and all the publications. But, I think that they were probably, they squished the thing against the slide, or it was probably manhandled when they ripped the end of the abdomen off when they were doing the illustrations and drawing the bits and whatnot. So I think it's pretty safe to say that, considering the male subanal plate looks almost identical to the ones in all the illustrations, and there's no other species of Panchlora recorded from Alabama, I don't think, and that's the most commonly recorded species in Nivea, is that the ones from Alabama, the Tuscaloosa Panchlora, are actually Panchlora nivea, true ones. And no, I'm pretty convinced, based on those subanal plates, that the line of Panchlora that originates from bugs in cyberspace, the one that my colony was founded from is some other species. I would guarantee it based on the differences in the subanal plates. And they look different. I sent you those images of things showing them, and it's not just variation, across the colony. Every single male in my the Panchlora species hobby, or within the hobby Panchlora line, they all have that rounded subanal plate, and all the ones from Tuscaloosa all have that sort of more rectangular shape to the end of the abdomen. Uh, and of course, they're morphologically different too. It looks like the Trunivia's eyes are closer together on the male. Does anybody have Trunivia? Um, and yeah, I thought so too. Like I said, I was playing devil's advocate when I looked at those figures, and when we were all almost a year ago, sort of going back and forth about what was what and what wasn't. But I mean, Occam's razor, Nivea is the only reported species from Alabama, and there are other species reported from Florida. They just, for some reason, it hasn't sort of been pushed into the literature per se. Like there's some pictures on iNaturalist of like brown Panchlora from Texas, and then there's the spots on the wings that some strains have and some others don't. And there's all kinds of miscellaneous USDA and university publications about X species of Panchlora intercepted with fruit. And there's one that Alan sent me that they had pictures of the adults. It was all in black and white, so it was very hard to see differences. They had pictures of the adults, and they had rearing techniques and all that other stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've learned more and more over the years that there's a lot of universities that just sort of quietly maintain different roach cultures that they've been doing since like the 60s, 70s, 80s, what have you. Alan, regarding the Redlands papaya Panchlora says, no, I didn't collect many and they all molted into males. Well, at least Carlos is still in the area and he could probably send us some more. I'm going to have to pester him for those. Yeah, like I said, there's probably plenty of places that professors went on an entomology trip to Florida and they grabbed a couple of the roaches they found, just thought, this would be cool to keep in the lab, and they just threw them in a glass jar and kept the colony going for years or whatever. Oren did, regarding the origins of the Panchlora hobby last year, I believe he pointed a finger at some reptile dealer or importer, and he said that the stock had been going since the 80s or 90s, which seems to have been when Oren acquired a lot of his stock of some of the species that we have as sort of mainstays. So yeah, I'm not sure what to think. We'll probably never know the actual origins of it, but I ran this by Alan too. I'm going to start labeling them as species hobby, and I mean this is not even Alan. Sometimes we just sort of run with these assumptions that we have, and not even Alan thought to like double check the Panchlora he was finding in Alabama, just because we just all assumed everything we had was Nivea. It's like, why would we have more lines of Nivea? We already have like a captive one, and then finding out that everything's different and or could be different was just sort of like really eye-opening. But yeah, so I, for common names and references and stuff like that, I label them species hobby. And for common name, as I said and will say over and over again, I'm not a big fan of common names, but rotund banana roach, and I ran that by Alan in reference to the rotundness or roundness of the male subanal plate. And even the wings and whatnot are all round on these individuals. And I don't point the finger at inbreeding or anything like that for this stuff, but my colony has never been less than 100 individuals. That's a pretty good number for keeping some heterozygosity, even factoring in possibly accidentally selecting 4 against different traits. So, yeah, round ass roach. So yeah, so I have the line that Satchel collected me of True Nivea from Tuscaloosa. I have what are probably Nivea from Little Manatee, and you know the more that I looked at them too, and the more that I sort of think about it, the more I feel like our species Costa Rica could even be actual Nivea because they have the little spots on their wings like the Tuscaloosa Nivea do, and that's the other thing. And unlike the species hobby, this is another huge thing, was noticing that none of the species hobby have dots on their wings, and the Tuscaloosa Nivea and most of the Nivea pictured in iNaturalist and Bug Eye and whatnot have little spots on the wings. But the hobbies don't have that. None of the individuals have any spots on their wings. But species Costa Rica does, and I know species Speckle does too, but the Costa Rican ones seem to have it in a similar position as the Nivea from Tuscaloosa and whatnot do. So I'm not going to make that bold claim yet that the species Costa Rica are actually Nivea. I'm not going to make that claim yet because I don't feel confident. I know nothing about the roach fauna of Costa Rica, what, 1.5 billion other Panchlora species it could be. But I am suspicious. I'm very suspicious. So that means in terms of cultures and lines of Panchlora, I mean, it's cool to have found something cryptic hiding in what we have, and who knows what else could happen like that. Actually, I was thinking about a species we have currently that I was like, could we have actually something other than that? We've just sort of been assuming that this is what it was this whole time. The Diploptera, which I wrote. Did my blog get published yet? No, it'll happen eventually. There's an upcoming blog post about the Diploptera and keying out the ones that Alan got me. And cesspool, yeah, INAT is a cesspool. And yeah, that's extremely true. But on Bug Guide as well, where there's people who have a bit more authority than iNaturalists in terms of stuff. And as I said, it is weird simultaneously that there are reports of other Panchlora in Texas and California and Florida, but like nobody's come straight out and said, that oh yeah, those are all possibilities. It's just everything says Nivea everywhere. So I think it's good to be skeptical. But with the majority of the reports and historical records and references and older papers being to Nivea being very widespread in the southeast and whatnot, I think it's Occam's razor definitely suggests that the ones and having looked at the subanal plate suggests that those are actually Nivea. Good resources for identifying roaches. The folks in the chat. Roach Forum, even though I don't go on Roach Forum much, and that's definitely my bad. It's just very difficult having to maintain the everything on top of socializing, which is why I'm here for this now. But Bug Guide can sort of point you for stuff you find. I think there's some good tips and images there for especially for Parkablata. iNaturalist, although as has been pointed out, is very unreliable, but sometimes you can get pointed in the right direction and then sort of go from there. I don't know, haven't been on Facebook in a very long time, thank God. But sometimes you can get a jump start on ideas from some of the better groups there and whatnot. And of course, going through old publications, a lot of Roth stuff will point you in the right. Well, it won't just point you in the right direction, but you can, look up key to Blabberus, and you can get somewhere with stuff that you have, even if a lot of the information is being changed and updated, and new species are being described. You can at least sort of again get pointed in the right direction. You basically have to get lucky and go through Google Scholar or whatever you use as a search engine to try and find free papers. A lot of Roth's old papers are free. Sometimes you can sort of, I was looking for a key to Diploptera. I was looking for more than the key to Diploptera that TJ had sent me. And I was looking for some figures and stuff. And I basically I found the name of a recent paper about Diploptera, copy pasted it, and then I went through like 20 or 30 links looking for somewhere where it was free, or I could view a couple pages free. You could download it for free. I think JSTOR, JSTOR.org, for those of us who toe the line of being lay people and also scientific. I believe it's through JSTOR. You can sign up for an account and you get to view three articles for free per month. So you just go in there, you sign up, you view while you're on JSTOR, and then you can only look at those 3 for the next month, and then it expires, and you can add more and go and look through those instead. Cockroach Study Group, on Facebook. You can also go to the Cockroach Species File, which is a wonderful resource, even if sometimes images are wrong or whatever. We're all human, and roaches are so understudied that you kind of need a bunch of people screaming at somebody to change things or update things or what have you. So, but it's wonderful you get to see holotypes of some stuff, which is very eye-opening, seeing what things are blatantly wrong, what things are blatantly right. And it's also free. Thank you for pointing that out. It is too hard to keep calling you invertebrate dude, so I'm going to just call you TJ from now here. A Cockroach Species File does have pictures of certain things. Sometimes they have pictures of captive stock of stuff. And depending on the species that you route down to, you can have pictures of holotypes and paratypes, which is great. For example, even if it's not a key, when I was looking through the key, some of this terminology is like, why are they being like blatantly confusing with some of this, like sub-semicircular versus subelliptical? It's like there's got to be a better way that you can articulate the differences between these two things. I had to go and look up sub-semicircular and subelliptical or whatever, and I had to look up the difference between the two species of Diploptera I was looking at. I think it was elliptica, or maybe it was whatever that really pretty one is that I can't remember the Latin for right now. And it was like, oh, this is a very distinct difference in these pronotum shapes that they're unintentionally obfuscating with this language here. But anyway, so you can use that, if you're running something through a key and you go on Cockroach Species File and you go through a bunch of species and you're like, okay, so this says this species has this shape. There's an image of the holotype. Oh, that's what they mean by that shape versus this other shape. So sometimes it's a lot of cross-referencing different resources and trying to figure things out. PM George Beccaloni give you access to the library. And lots of keys in there as well. And I'm going to have to write that down. I have not contacted George in quite a while. Who knows if he'd be pleased or annoyed to have me pestering him for various keys and whatnot. I don't really have an urge to key out much after that Diploptera. That was kind of my holy grail in terms of identifying for a while. Maybe I'll go through and look at something else eventually. Maybe if I feel suicidal, I'll go through and try and key out the other Panchlora we have. So yeah, this has been wonderful. I think I might call things soon, just because I feel like we've covered quite a bit of ground here. We've gone past the first potential stop time rather. And I would like to get through a couple of more emails. I have loved and enjoyed the conversation and talking and ranting and whatnot. But it will be cool to cover a little bit more ground in emails. It has been very stressful going through thousands after going through thousands of bugs and all that. You don't have Panchlora species white anymore, right? Maybe that's something we could touch on the next time that I live stream. So with that being said, thank you everybody who showed up, who popped in, who asked things, or who didn't. This has been wonderful. If you have emails that I have not yet gotten to or answered, perhaps I will get to them tonight. If not, hopefully within the next 10 days. So, yeah, thanks everybody for attending, and I'll see you in a week.